Hello, everyone, and in this lesson, we'll focus on music theory basics and also dive into warp, time stretching, and envelopes in more detail. Let's create a new project, or you can open up mine and work in it. It's up to you. Create a new MIDI track, put any instrument on it. I will use the grand piano for this. And open the piano roll. Let's pay attention to the labels that we have on the piano roll. C1, C2, C3, C4, and etc. Each of them tells you where the C note is located, and the number means an octave. There are only 12 notes in music, so let's learn how to distinguish them. C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Sharp means pitching up by half a tone, and flat means pitching down by half a tone. Let's take a look at our piano roll. You will see the white keys and the black keys. The black keys are sharp and flat, with the exception of E and F notes. There are no black keys between them. Now let's move on to the scales. In general, in music, there are a large number of different melodic scales. But in modern music, there are two most common and popular, major and minor. The simplest difference is in the sounding of these two scales. Major sounds cheerful, while the minor sounds kinda sad. For example, let's create another MIDI track and build both minor and major scales and hear the difference. Let's call our tracks respectively by using the hotkey command R. In order to build a major, it's enough to arrange all the notes on the white keys. Now, let's build the minor. For this, let's take the same major scale, copy it, take the third, sixth, and the seventh notes, and lower them one step down, half a tone. Let's listen. Okay, so we have built minor scale. Perfect. Next, let's move on to the chords. Chord is a set of notes that are played simultaneously. Everything from 3 notes and more is considered a chord. Let's look at the example. To do this, create 2 more new MIDI tracks and name them major chord and minor chord. And open up our piano roll. And let's build our major chord from the C note. For this, let's put a C note first as the first step. Then the second step will be E. And the fifth step will be the G. Let's listen to it. Great. In order to build a minor chord, copy our major chord, then paste it into the corresponding track in the piano roll, and lower the third step down by half a tone. Let's listen to it. So we have built our C minor chord. Now let's create another MIDI track and name it chord scale and build chords in it. Chords are indicated by Roman numerals. Uppercase numbers indicate major chords and lowercase ones indicate minor. In modern music, the most common are first, fourth, fifth, and sixth chords. And so we have moved to the chord progressions. In other words, there are combinations of several chords. I've put the markers on every major and minor chord for a better understanding. Let's take a look at a few examples of chord progressions. By changing the first, fourth, fifths, and sixth chords within the scale, you will get various progressions. Let's listen to an example. Try to create 3 variations of different progressions using these 4 chords. A 3-note chord is called a third or a triad. Cool. Let's now build a slightly more complex progression from our chords and interpret it a little differently to change its harmonic color. To do this, I will select every second note in my chords and raise them an octave up using the hotkey Shift Up. Now, let's listen to what has changed. As you can hear, these are the same chords but only in different interpretation. Further, we will consider slightly more complex chords and how to distinguish them. Let's add the 7th step to our chord and we'll get C major 7ths or C minor 7ths. And in the same way, we can add the 9th step and get a C major 9s or C minor 9s, and the 13th step respectively to get the C major 13s or C minor 13s. One of the more complex chords is a suspension chord. Let's take our C major chord and lower the 3rd step by 2 tones down. This way we will get a C suspended second. Second means that we have lowered the 3rd step to the 2nd step, which has changed the harmonization of our chord. In a similar way, we can build the C suspended 4th by raising the 2nd note in our chord to the 4th step. C6 is built in such a way that the 6th A note is added to the C major chord. We can also add a D, which is a 9th step in this chord, and get a C6/9th chord. As a practical task, try to take any other major chord and build all the variations of the chords from it. Now let's study the inversions. These are the inversions of chords that give a different mood and color to the chords, so that they sound in the same frequency range and are also more convenient for playing on an instrument. Let's look at the example. I will take a progression of 4 chords and invert them. To do this, I will leave the first chord the same, but in other 2, I will take the 2nd and 3rd notes and lower them an octave down. In the last 4th chord, I will take only the 3rd and lower it an octave down either. In fact, nothing new has been added to the chords. These are the same chords. I have only inverted some of the notes an octave down so that they all sound in the same range, and it also has changed the color of our chords. Let's take the same progression and build a bass line to it. To do this, take the first notes of the chords. It's called the root note, and it's the first note from which we will have built the chord. Copy them and lower them by an octave down. Thus, we have got our bass line. Then we can change the notes in the bass to any other that we have in our melodic scale or in a chord to achieve the desired result. As a practical task, take a few progressions and build a bass line to them. Remember that you can always refer to the tips in this project if you forgot anything. Let's move to the measures. One bar consists of 4 quarter notes. The measure in which we are currently working in is 4 quarters, which means that are 4 quarter notes in each of the 4 bars. The whole note can be divided into halves, quarters, eighths, sixteenths, 32nd, etc. 4 quarter notes equals 1 measure, or 8 eighth notes equals 1 measure, or 16 sixteenths notes equals 1 measure. Great. Thus, when we use the smart grid, snap to the grid will be relative to the selected measure. As a practical task, I would recommend you to make various rhythmic patterns using different measures and the grid. The next thing we will look at in this lesson is the time stretching feature, called warp in Live. It allows you to adjust the audio wave to the required tempo without changing the pitch. It will be very useful for us in our future lessons. So now we'll cover up the basics of warping. Let's take a loop from our sample pack and drag it on a new audio track. Let's call it warp. Now let's listen to the sample without the metronome and with the metronome turned back on again. As you have already noticed, our beat is out of the metronome and it doesn't match the BPM of our project. In order to fix this, let's double click on an audio clip, and at the bottom of the screen, we have a section with an audio wave opened up. Then let's turn on the warp function, select our first transient. Further, let's define all the accents in our pattern. Place the markers above them and determine whether our beat is dragging or rushing. Then you'll need to move the warp markers so that our beat begins to match with the metronome. Another useful feature in Live is quantize. It's an alignment to the set value. In order to quantize our loop, select everything, right-click and choose Quantize Settings, select the desired value, and click OK. You can also use the hotkey Command U. I must say that in order to master warping, you need to practice on various samples and loops. You can also try various warp modes that are over here and discover how they affect the sound. And the last thing that we will cover in this lesson is envelopes. Let's create two new tracks and merge them into a group by using the hotkey Command G. Call this group envelopes. Then copy our warp loop here, double click on it, and open the envelopes window. The task is to remove the bass kick from this loop and replace it with another one. Go into envelopes, select the volume modulation parameter, turn on the pencil button or press the hotkey Command B and lower the volume on all the kicks in this loop. Only a snare and a hi-hat should be heard the most. Then take a one-shot kick sample from the sample pack and place it in that places where you have removed the kick. Done. Perfect. So our today's lesson has come to the end, and today we have learned some of the basics of the music theory, how to build chords, progressions, harmonies. We have also learned how to build bass lines to your chords. We have also covered up warp and envelopes. And in the next lesson, we will learn how to work with audio and MIDI in more detail, how to record and manipulate audio. See you in the next lesson.